أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين. فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كانا فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين. فتلقى آدم من ربه به كلمات فتاب عليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم صدق الله العظيم. All right, now we will review some of the rules of tajweed. Um, Last week, as you remember, we were looking at the rules of raw. Let me just get out of this mode. All right. So we looked at the rules of raw. Let me just take my pen and draw a little arrow. Okay. So let's see. Somebody wants to ask a question. Let them try. Okay. All right. So rules. No, the thing just moved. What is it? Here it is. Ruling of raw, letter being heavy or light. So we went through these notes, but today I wanted to actually go through the rules once again as a review. And I mean, there are some people, I think they are new, who are joining in today. It will be, obviously new material for them, and a review for the people who were there last time. And of course, if you had some questions or whatever, then hopefully those questions will get answered again or today, inshallah ta'ala. So let us go to our website and go to that page. So, I mean, our website is, as you know, is this here, qsi1.com. And the third point here, learn the rules. So if you click on this, it loads this page. I can take this page out. Okay, so on the left hand side is the index. Um, I guess the major difference between these notes here and this page that you find on our website is that every example here has audio behind it. For example, like this one here.
كنتم من تدخل
And the lessons, they start, the first one is Noon Sakin and Tanween and Meme Sakin and so on like that. And rules of raw chapter is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth one down. So, but regardless, we can go through the rules of raw in in this or on this page, where you can actually go and click them yourself and then see how those rules are implemented. And they're also the theory is there as well. So let me just click on this one, and it loads the first one, rules of raw number one. Okay, what is this lesson number one for the rules of raw? It's for Tafkheem raw. Tafkheem raw. Tafkheem means rounding of raw. So let us read this. What does it say? If the letter ra has a fatha or fathatain. So where is fatha? Okay, there is like this one here. Fatha. This one has fatha. Ra has fatha on top. And this ra has fathatain here. Okay. So if the letter ra has fatha or fathatain, dhamma or dhammatain. So where is dhamma? Here is dhamma here on the ra, and dhammatain here, the last one. Okay, then it is pronounced heavy, that is with tafkheem. Tafkheem means basically rounding in a simplistic terminology. So we are going to read this now. Actually, you can even click on it and you can see this one.
رسول
So how do we read it? We have to round the ra. And if you remember, um, I showed you the mouth pictures. Let me go and show you the mouth picture for letter ra. Here it is. So normally, letter ra is just um, the makhraj of the ra is just given as the tip of the tongue touching the end of the dome there, and basically it vibrates in a very fine manner. Ra, not ra. If someone says ra, that is a mistake. It's wrong. Okay, so it has to be a very fine vibration for one or two waves. That's it. So this is the actual makhraj. Let me grab my pen and I just so here that's too thick. Okay, so tip of the tongue touching the end of the dome. This is the dome here. This here is your dome inside. Okay, and you can call it a palate here. This is the palate area. This is the dome, end of dome. Okay, that's where the tip of tongue is touching here also. Now, what's the difference between these two? These two frames here, what's the difference? Okay, the difference is, let me move this up slightly. Okay, here is the answer. This is the first frame is ra ul muraqqaqa. Muraqqaqa meaning flat, flat with tarqiq, and ra ul mufakhama, ra which is rounded. So what do we learn from this? That if we want to round the ra, you have to raise the back of the tongue here. Here I can use the fat pen here. Use the fat pen. See this? So once you do this here, you will end up rounding the ra. The makhraj is the same. The point of articulation is the same for both, but the tongue, I guess the tongue shape is different. Okay, in muraqqaq, flat ra, the tongue is relaxed, relaxed in the back, more or less flat. Okay, but in the uh, rounded ra, the tongue is humped. As you can see, there's a hump here. Once you do that, what do you get effectively? Effectively, you get a little trough here. Okay, and this is what helps the sound, the rounding of the sound. Okay, raw, raw, and this will be, if I wanted to say, like a re. So what we learned from the other rule is that if ra has fatha or fathatain or dhamma, actually I should have written them. Oops, sorry. Take these away. I'm going to write them here. Okay. So if ra, fatha, fathatain, ra, dhamma, or dhammatain, then the ra is going to be heavy and rounded. Let me put an O like for rounding. And if ra has kasra or kasratain, then the ra will be muraqqaq, flat, ri, ri. So this will be ra, run. I have to put a alif here as well. That's the rule. Run and uru, urun. So what I'm doing, I'm raising the tongue in the back. So you get like a wholesome sound, raw. Okay, but if you don't raise this, and if you say raw, you will be ra, ra, run, run, ru, run. So if I say ra, run, or raw, run. So the second one is correct. Ra, run is wrong. Raw, run is correct. So in the second version, I am actually raising the back of the tongue. Then you get that wholesome sound, okay? That wholesome rounded sound, full mouth sound. In this one, we don't hump the tongue in the back of the tongue. We don't hump it. We don't raise it. So it will be ri, rin, ri, rin. So there you go. So hopefully you have understood the um, how to make the raw heavy or rounded and how to make the raw flat. Okay, let us go back to our page here. So it said that if you have again raw with a fatha or fathatain or dhamma dhammatain, then raw will be mufakham or rounded. This will be ra, rasulun, ra, rasulun. So I am humping the tongue in the back. I am raising the back of the tongue up the way I showed. Rusul, rusul. Here you have to be a little bit careful. Okay, you know why? You have to be a little bit careful here. You know why? Because imagine if here for raw, we are humping the tongue in the back, right? Like this. We are raising the tongue in the back. But when you come to seen, if you do not flatten the tongue, what's gonna happen? Can you take a guess? What's gonna happen? If you say seen and if you keep the tongue raised in the back for the raw, if you keep it raised, what's gonna happen? Seen is gonna turn into a sod. Very simply. And it's gonna sound like this. Rusul, rusul, sul. So you have then if you do that, you have effectively changed a letter of the Quran with another letter, rusul, which is wrong. Astaghfirullah. Nobody has the right to do that. Nobody can change letters. Okay. So what you will have to do in order to make sure that you do not change the scene or you do not swap the scene with sod, you will have to straighten, you'll have to flatten the tongue for scene. Urusul, urusul. Yeah, you have to do it a little bit fast, but you have to do it. Otherwise, it will change. Subhanallah. Okay, because Arabic is a very sensitive language. You know why this happens? Because the makhraj or the point of articulation of sin and sod is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. There's no difference. What's the difference is for sin, the back of the tongue is flat. For sod, the back of the tongue is raised. Exactly the way it is raised for raw. Raw mufakhama. Same way. So for seen, if we do not flatten the tongue, what's going to happen? We will be effectively swapping seen with sod. Astaghfirullah. We can't do that. So these are the things that you learn when you learn the ilm of tajweed. You learn these things. That why is it so important to learn the ilm of tajweed and so that you can be careful so that you will not be committing blunders like these. Okay. Okay. So this will be rusul, rusul, rusul. All right, this one. طيرا, طيرا, طيرا. Okay, so ra again, mufakham, rounded here. خبير, ra again, rounded. So these are the conditions of ra being rounded. Okay, all right. Next point. Let's read it. If ra sakin is preceded by a letter having a fatha or dhamma, then the ra sakin will be pronounced mufakham or heavy, like this one here. So where is the ra sakin? Ra sakin is right here. Ra is sakin. As you can see, there is a sukun or the sukun on it, or jazm. You can call it jazm or sukun. Same thing here. Ra is sakin, has sukun or jazm on it. Okay. So now, in this case, ra sakin is preceded by a letter with a dhamma. In this case, ra sakin is preceded by a letter with a fatha. So in both cases, ra will be mufakham, rounded. Mur, mur, rr, raising the back of the tongue. Mur, sel. Again, you get the scene here. You need to flatten the tongue right away. Here you raise the tongue to make the ra mufakham. Here you need to flatten the tongue right away so that you get the scene, not sad. If you did not flatten the tongue, you will say mursal, mursal, which will be wrong. You will be effectively changing the scene with a sad. Okay. All right. Same thing here. أرسل أر را مفخم, but scene has to be muraqqaq, flat. أرسل. So here you need to go completely flat. If you don't, if you keep the rounded sense, again you're going to end up changing the scene with the sad. أرسل. See that? أرسل أرسل. See? So we don't want that. That'll be wrong. So here rounded, here flat. أرسل. Or this one actually lam is second. So أرسل. أرسل. Sel. And the lam always is always flat, except if it is in the as a part of lam in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, known as lamul jalala, and if it is preceded by a letter with a fatha or dhamma, otherwise lam will be flat. So it will be flat, 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 flat. There you go. Arsala or arsal. I keep on saying arsala here. There's a jazm here. Sukun. Arsal. Mursal. All right. Here we go. All right. Now rule number 3. In case of a stop, if a ra sakin is preceded by a second letter, except ya sakin. So this is the exception here. Except ya sakin, that is in turn preceded by a letter having a fatha or dhamma, then the letter ra is pronounced heavy or with tafkheem. So what does it mean? That ra is sakin, as you can see, ra is sakin, and the letter before is also sakin. Okay, the exception is ya sakin. So there's no ya sakin here, so that's okay. So the letter before is also sakin, then you have to go one more back and look at this letter. What does this letter have? It has fatha. If it has fatha, then ra will be mufakham or rounded. Same thing here. If ra is sakin, the letter before is sakin as well. It is not ya sakin. And the letter before has dhamma. So ra sakin will be read mufakham, rounded. So how would we read this? Sabr, 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 rounded. Shukr, rounded. Shukr, not shukr, not ra, but ra. So sabr, shukr. There you go. I hope you're following. Everybody's following, inshallah. Okay, the fourth one. Was it the fourth one? Here it is. Okay, now, if the letter ra has a kasra or kasratain and is preceded by a letter having a fatha or dhamma with continuation, then the letter ra is pronounced thin and soft, but with a stop at the end of the word, it is pronounced heavy with tafkheem. Okay, so now we look at this here. Where is your letter Ra? Here's your letter Ra. So as we are going, see that's what it's saying, continuation. As we are going, so as if we are going and continuing to the next word here, whatever word is going to be here. So what's going to happen? The Ra is mutaharrik, is has a vowel. So how are we going to read this here? No, this Ra has a kasra. والقمر والقمر Ra muraqqaq, flat. So as whatever it is, والقمر إذا تلاها, let's say, in the surah there, والقمر Ra flat. Ra with a kasra would be flat. But here what happens when you have a stop? This is the end of the ayah sign. So when we stop here, what's going to happen to the last letter that is mutaharrik? It becomes sakin as a rule. So this kasra goes away. So then ra becomes sakin. And then this ra sakin, if you remember, if it is preceded by a letter with a fatha, ra will be mufakham, rounded. So how will we read this? This one here, we are stopping here. Ra becomes sakin. والقمر rounded. والقمر rounded. Ra. Okay. Now here, if we were to continue, then we will say قادر ra, flat ra, flat ra. Here's your ra. It will be flat. قادر. qa is a mufakham letter rounded. That is a flat letter, and ra in this case is going to be flat because it has a kasratain, and we're not stopping here, so ra does not become sakin. So you do the kasratain and you make it flat. Qadarin. But if you were to actually stop here, which is the next scenario, that there is a stop here. If you stop, then what's going to happen? This ra kasratain is the kasratain is going to go away and ra will become sakin. When ra becomes sakin, you look at the letter before. It has a fatha, so therefore we will read the ra mufakham. Qadar. Qadar. Ra will be mufakham. Okay. Then the next one. If we were to continue in this case, then ra, this ra here is which is mutaharrik has haraka kasratain. So we will say, if we were continuing to the next word, whatever it would be, dhufurin, dhufurin, ra flat because of kasratain. Kasratain, ra will becomes flat. Dhufurin. But if we were to stop at that word, then it will be dhufur. Why? Because the kasratain then goes away because we are stopping and ra becomes sakin. Sakin. And if ra is sakin, look at the previous letter. If it has a fatha or dhamma, ra sakin will be read mufakham, rounded. So this will be dhufur, rounded. Dhufur. So no, the kasratain here no longer comes into play because we are stopping. Ra becomes sakin. This kasratain disappears, and the dhamma before the ra sakin is going to make this ra sakin mufakham, rounded. Next example again. If we were to read in a continuous basis to the next word, we'll say hajarin, whatever is going to come in, hajarin, because of the kasratain, ra will be read flat. But the same ra, when you stop, it becomes sakin, and you have to look at the letter before. Jim has a which is jim, which has a fatha. So the ra sakin will be read mufakham, rounded, hajar, hajar, like that. The last example here. If we were to continue, shajarin, shajarin, okay, ra flat if we were continuing, but if we are actually stopping, like in the next scenario, stopping right here, ra becomes sakin, preceded by a letter with a fatha, so ra will be mufakham shajar. So ra here is it will be muraqqaq flat, ra here will be the same word, okay. If we are continuing, kasratain will make this ra muraqqaq flat. If we are stopping, ra becomes sakin preceded by a fatha, and ra will be read mufakham rounded. Shajar here, shajarin here, shajar. There you go. Okay, the next rule, rule number 5 here. Okay, so you will also see instances where the ra is sakin. So let's read this out here. If the letter ra is sakin, okay, like these here, there is a like this one here, ra is sakin. Here, ra is sakin. Okay, here, ra is sakin. Okay, if the letter ra is sakin and the preceding letter bears a temporary kasra. The preceding letter in this case is what? Hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl. Then the letter ra is pronounced with tafkheem. So what happens? You see, this is a verb. It's a verb. Okay. So when there's a verb, hamzatul wasl, in this case, if we were to start from here, if we were to start from here, then we will have to use hamzatul wasl, and hamzatul wasl in this case, you see, will assume because of this kasra on the third letter, hamzatul wasl will get a kasra. But this is temporary because if we were actually reading from a word here, then this hamzatul wasl, as you know, is going to drop out. It won't even come into play. But the situation, I mean, the fact remains that there is an hamzatul wasl, which is a temporary kasra before ra sakin. In this case also, you see, you have, so if we were to read this word on its own, then it'll be irtabatum. Why? Because you look at if this is again a verb. Let me just move this arrow a little bit. Okay, here's your ra sakin. Okay, now whenever you have a verb, this one here, when you have to look at the third letter, and if the third letter has a fatha or a kasra, then hamzatul wasl will get a kasra. So again it will be irtabitum. Okay, so again it's temporary kasra. It will get a kasra if we were to read this. So there is a temporary kasra there. Here again, in this particular one, ra sakin preceded by hamzatul wasl. The hamzatul wasl, if we were to read, is like this: irtabu. Then look at the third letter has a fatha. Hamzatul wasl will get a kasra. Irtabu. So the the scenario, I mean the actual fact is that there is a temporary kasra. So the rule says that if the letter ra is sakin and the preceding letter bears a temporary kasra, then the letter ra is pronounced with tafkheem. So how are we going to recite this one here? It will be, although there is a kasra here, see this one has a kasra, but that rule is not gonna, the kasra preceding the ra is not going to apply. Why? Because there is a temporary kasra right before the ra sakin. Although you have and then irtabu, two words, but and we are joining the two together, reading two together, but because there's this temporary kasra, we will round the ra and we will read amir tabu, ra mufakham rounded, amir, mir, not mir, not mir, but mir, amir tabu, amir tabu, this one, inir, ra rounded, إنير تابتم إنير تابتم. This one إر not إر ارجعي ارجعي راء مفخم. So in all of these cases راء will be rounded مفخم. All right, here we go. Okay, rule number 6. Okay, now what does it say? If the letter Ra is sakin, as we can see, sakin, 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 and the preceding letter bears a kasrah, but the following letter in the same word is musta'liya or mutbaqa. What musta'liya and mutbaqa? Now, let us take a little break from this and go to, I'm going to take this away for now, and let us go back to this one. Okay, and I will just explain what is musta'liya and mutabaqa. Okay, musta'liya. Okay, let me first write. Okay, do you remember the 7 rounded letters? Hopefully you all remember, right? Right. Okay, everyone remembers, inshallah. Khussa, ضغط, قل. These are the 7 rounded letters. Okay, now I think I also mentioned that you can sort of divide them into 2 groups. Okay, okay, let's divide them into 2 groups. One is kha, ghain, and qaf, and the other one is sad, dad, ta, dha. Okay, now this this group has, which is called isti'la. Huh? Only one. Khusal ضغط قذ. Yeah, this is not a dot. This is a sukun. Oh yeah, I think my pen bounced. My pen bounced here, I think. Okay, all right. Okay, so this one has isti'la. I'm going to explain what is isti'la. Okay, and these, so this group has isti'la and that's it. And this isti'la makes them rounded. This group here has isti'la as well. Isti'la and uh, itbaq. Itbaq. Okay, so remember I was telling you when we were doing the rounded letters that these letters are really rounded. Okay, these letters are, let's say, like these letters have double the force. That's why they make them. These are really rounded. These letters have, let's say, half the force of these. So what happens is that whenever these letters have a kasra underneath, then they go flat. But these letters, if they have kasra underneath, doesn't really matter. The kasra doesn't make them go flat. They still remain rounded. So this will be like with the kasra they go khi, ghi, qi. But this one si still have to make it rounded. Si, li, ti, li. Okay. All right. Now what happens is, I'm going to take this away now, because I'm going to make this big. So I'm going to show you the first group here. I'll just take it away for now. Okay, and I'm going to, let me go, qaf, ghain, and kha. This should be close by here. So kha and ghain will be here, and qaf is right here. So they're close to each other. Okay, here. So ghain and kha are throat letters from the uppermost part of the throat, and you can see the real back of the tongue is elevated, which is called isti'la. Okay. If I go to the qaf makhraj, right here, up here, okay, you can see again the back of the tongue is raised, and that's where we make qaf. So ghain, qaf, and kha, that group there, if I can bring them back, see right here, the first group here has the there the sti'la, the back of the tongue going up. Okay. Now, um, let us look at the other four. Sad, dad, ta, dha. So let us go to dad and ta first. We can probably get those first. Here's your dad here, and ta. Okay, so yeah, dad and ta and sad, and sad, dad, ta, and va is going to be here. Okay, let's start with dad. So dad, you can see the whole thing is up. Okay, yeah. So not only back of the tongue goes up, but the middle of the tongue also, like this is like, it's called adhesion, al-itbaq, adhesion to the palate, adhesion to the palate. So it's really, so look at the forces. Like if I can represent the forces, the back of the tongue going up, and the middle of the tongue also, this part going towards the palate, real double the force here. So that's why they are really rounded, those letters. So this is dod here, and let's look at what is this one here. Okay, this one is ta. So dod, ta. Again, you can see the back is up, and then towards the middle also is going up. Back is up, and this is up as well. As compared to, if you look at the again the letters with the isti'la, like here, look, only the back is up. It's not like ta, like this. The whole shebang, everything is up there. Okay, and that's what makes it really rounded. Okay, all right. Now this is sad. So this is ta, sad. Again, back is up, and this area is also up, going towards the palate here. This is the palate on top. Okay, and then va. Here is your va. Okay, the back is up, and this part is also up. Okay, but you still need that little trough here to make it rounded. But it is not just the back going up like this, but its majority of the tongue is going up. This part going towards the palate, this part, the back of tongue, is also being raised, elevated. That is isti'la. Isti'la and itbaq, the two forces. Okay, so now we can go back to this one. So what was it saying? If the letter ra is sakin, so letter ra is sakin, as we can see here. Okay. If the letter ra is sakin and the preceding letter bears, meaning has a kasra, preceding letter has a kasra right here, as you can see. There you go. And there you go. There you go. And there you go. Preceding letter has a kasra. But the following letter in the same word is musta'liya or mutbaqa. So the letter that follows with this one is ta. So now, as you know, ta is not only musta'liya, meaning has isti'la, the back of the tongue going up, but it has itbaq as well, as I showed you. The two groups, kha, ghain, and qaf, only isti'la, and sad, dad, ta, and dha has both isti'la and itbaq, has itbaq as well. And itbaq. Okay. So now the condition, first condition, ra is sakin. Second condition, preceded by a letter with a kasra. Third condition, followed by a letter which has either isti'la or itbaq. So, and what does it say? And following the following letter in the same word is musta'liya, meaning has isti'la, or itbaq, that is mutbaqa or mutbaqa. So it could be this or this. Then the letter ra is pronounced with tafkheem, rounded. So although this ra, when you're looking at the first case now, okay, this ra is sakin, although it is preceded by a letter with a kasra, but because it is followed by a letter which is mutbaqa, it has musta'li as well, but mutbaqa, then we are going to round it. This one is rounded, so we are going to recite this ra sakin with tafkheem, rounded. How would we do that? Kir, not kir, not kir. Although, so this don't let this fool you here. That yes, ra is sakin and preceding letter has a kasra, so therefore it should be flat. No, 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 no. Sorry, you gotta look at the letter that comes after as well. And if it is one of those heavy, like the rounded letters, like ta in this case, which is a real heavy one, then we are going to round the ra. This is going to influence the ra to become rounded. Qirtas, qir, qirtas. Okay, the next one. Ra is sakin. Preceding letter has a kasra. Okay, imagine if we were to just say this part here, so we will say yes, mir. But we cannot really stop here. So we have to consider the letter that is coming after, and if the letter that is coming after is rounded letter, this letter is not only mustalia but mutabaqa as well, has both forces, very heavily rounded letter, this one, sad. So that's why this ra sakin, even though the letter before has a kasra, will be mufakham, rounded. How will we say it? Mir, mirsad, mirsad. All right, this one here. Ra is second, preceding letter kasra, but following letter is musta'liya, as isti'la is one of the one letter from this group here. It is a rounded letter. So how are we going to say it? Firqa, fir, ra rounded, firqa. Okay, this one here. Ra is second, preceded by letter with a kasra, but followed by a rounded letter, so the raw sakin will be influenced by this rounded letter right after, which is in this case musta'liya only. Kha belongs to the first group here. So we will again round this letter, make it mufakham, rounded. La tusa'ir. Okay, we're going to round. We will not say ir, but we say ir. لا تصعر خدك. لا تصعر عر خدك. So raw will be rounded. There you go. That was the sixth rule. Moving on to the seventh one. Now, in this word, firqin or firqin, if I play this,
فرق فرق
see that? Both are allowed. In this word, both tafkheem and tarqiq of ra are permitted. Tafkheem is due to musta'liya, this one. Tafkheem, rounding, is due to musta'liya, qaf letter being present after the letter ra, which is sakin. And tarqiq is due to the weakening of the musta'liya letter due to the presence of kasra. So, as I said, remember that if the musta'liya letters, which is again kha, ghain, and qaf, with kasra or kasratain, they become weak. It pulls them down. Kasra or kasratain. Kasra or kasratain. Kasratain. So what is it saying is that yes, we will say firqin because of the rounded letter being there, but because around this rounded letter, okay, which is musta'liya letter, not mutbaqa. Musta'liya letter is weak, is weaker because it belongs to this group here, is weaker than the mutbaqa letters. So because it has kasratain, that's why, because of that weakness of this rounded letter, we are allowed to say it. Um, what does it say? And tarqiq. So we can make this raw sakin flat because of the weakening of this qa due to kasratain. So you can say firqin, rounded, or firqin. So this word here. This is the interesting word where you can do both. Okay, next one. Number 8. Okay, so what does it say now? If a stop is made on the letter ra, causing it to become sakin, okay, okay, as shown. So we stop here,
أدخل مصر
okay. And if a sakin mutbaqa letter precedes the letter ra, which in turn is preceded by a letter bearing a kasra, okay, then the reader is permitted to do either tafkhim or tarqiq. Okay, so here you have these two examples. Tafkhim is, however, preferred in the first example due to the fatha on the letter ra, and tarqiq is preferred in the second example due to the presence of kasra on the letter ra in this case here. So tafkhim is, however, the first example. Yeah. So adkhulu misra, or even if you stop here, ra becomes sakin, it will be misr because ra will become sakin. If you stop here, okay, fatha goes away, ra becomes sakin. Adkhulu misr. So tafkhim is, however, preferred in the first example due to fatha on the letter. So the letter ra originally had the fatha. Tafkhim is preferred. Okay. And in the next one, tarqiq is preferred because there is a ra has a kasra under it. Ainul qitr. Okay, if you were to stop here, then kasra is going to go away. Ra will become sakin, but the fact remains that there was a kasra here. You're stopping, and there is this kasra here. So this kasra, due to this kasra and this kasra, you can make the ra flat. Qitr, it's preferred. In this case, it's preferred, in the first case, preferred to make the ra sakin mufakham rounded. Why? Because it had the fatha. This fatha it will give it that preference. So this kasra, although it's there, but because we are stopping and because there was a fatha, the preference will be to make the ra sakin mufakham rounded. Okay. All right. Number 9. Okay. If the letter ra has kasra or kasra tanween or kasratain, then it is recited with tarqiq. This is a simple one. So how do we do this now? Simply amrin, 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 sharrin, sharrin. Ra flat, flat, flat here. This one has kasra. This one has kasratain, kasratain, kasra. Ri, risalatin, risalatin. Okay? Amrin, sharrin. A lot of people have a problem to say the ra flat. They always round it. Why? Because we are always, living in Western world, where the language is mainly English. The R is always, like, or rounded, more or less. So we take the raw as the equivalent is raw, but raw in Arabic can be, as we discussed, can be round or flat. Okay, so with kasra kasratain, raw will be flat. You have to make sure that the back of the tongue in this case is flat, whereas in this case the back of the tongue is raised up, raised up. That's the difference between flat raw and a rounded raw. So here is going to be kasratain, 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 or uh, yeah, sorry, the kasra here, kasra, kasratain, kasratain, kasra. Okay, rin, rin with a flat. This one, not this. Rin, 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 sharrin, ri, risalatin. So it's a simple rule. Number 10. If the letter ra is sakin, but the previous letter has a kasra, then the letter ra is recited with tarqeeq. Okay, again, the simple one, that letter ra is sakin, previous letter has a kasra, so the ra sakin will be pronounced flat. Fir, ra, fir, firdaus, firdaus. Okay, so ra sakin will be recited flat. The next rule, number 11. In case of a stop, if a sakin ra is preceded by a sakin letter, except mutbaqa letters. Mutbaqa, again, what are the mutbaqa letters? Sad, ta, dha. That is in turn preceded by a letter bearing or having a kasra, then the letter ra is pronounced soft or thin, that is muraqqaq. Soft, thin, muraqqaq, all synonymous. So what are we going to do? Here is your ra sakin. So in case of a stop, If the ra sakin here, we are stopping here, we're stopping. In case of a stop, if the raw sakin is preceded by a sakin letter, which you can see, the preceding letter is sakin, sakin, preceding letter, okay, except mutbaqa letters. So yeah, the ha is not mutbaqa, ha is not sad dot ta, jim is not one of the sad dot ta, and this in turn is preceded by a letter having a kasra. There you go. So this one is in turn preceded by a letter having kasra here. There you go, kasra. Okay. Then the letter ra is pronounced soft or thin, that is muraqqaq. So how will we say this? Hijr, ra, ra, flat. Hijr, hijr, sihr, sihr, sihr. One thing I want to point out is that there are two groups. Okay, mahmusa, mahmusa and majhura. Majhura meaning having voice letters, and mahmusa not having voice. For example, what are they? You can memorize this. Fahathahu, fahathahu. Actually, this one will have a tajdeed. Fahathahu. Okay, this is a little, you can say, little going to be mud, but just let's assume that there is one. فحثه شخص سكت. فحثه شخص سكت. What are they? فا ح ثا ها شين خا صاد سين كاف تا. And all the rest are, okay, the rest of the letters are majhura, have voice. These do not have voice. At the point of articulation, there is no voice. There is no vocal cord that you put with it. So like for example, let me take seen. Seen at the point of articulation is s, s, like air leaking, okay, and the sound, wet sound, s, okay. On this side is a letter za. This the point of articulation of seen and za is exactly the same. There is no difference at all. But at the point of articulation, the sound of seen is s, and the point of articulation, sound of za is z, z, buzzing sound. Z. What's the difference? The difference simply is this one, seen, does not have the vocal cords working. Za has the vocal cords working. Za has voice. Seen does not have voice. It's just air passing through. So the group Mahmusa is the group that does not have voice. So now tell me, is Ra is one of this Mahmusa letter? No, it's not. So Ra is going to fall here. Ra means Ra has to have voice. Now, the point I was trying to make. Now, if you come here and if you say Hijr, see, a lot of people, they will, if the Ra appears at the, especially at the end, which is sakin, they do not pronounce the ra audibly. Hijr, sihr. You are making the ra mahmusa, whereas ra is not mahmusa, it's majhura. You have to have voice. So you have to say hijr, voice. So voice letter. Sihr. Otherwise, it's going to remain ambiguous. What was that? For example, if you go and look at Suratul, uh, so I'm going to show the, let's say, Mus'haf. We already read page number 6. We read that. We're going to read page number 7 soon. But let me just take you to these 6. So let's say, let's go to 601. Okay, yeah, that's the one I wanted actually. Look at this one here. Suratul Asr. Suratul Asr. So when we read Suratul Asr, a lot of people will say, Wal Asr. Where's the Ra? Innal insana lafi khusr. Where's the Ra? So you need to put voice behind it because Ra is not Mahmusa. It's a Majhura letter. It's a voice letter. You gotta put voice. Wal Asr. See that? Now I say, oh, now it's not ambiguous. I thought it was like wal as. What is wal as? Okay. Innal insana lafi khusr. Put the voice. Khusr. Not khusr. Here. Bis sabr. No. Bis sabr. Khusr. So going back to this one again. Hijr. Okay. So this one is going to be, in this case, pronounce the raw will here in this case will be pronounced flat, so it will be hijr and sihr. Hijr and sihr. Okay. The next rule, as shown in these in the examples, the letter raw, the raw here bears dhamma, dhammatain, or fatha. So here you have dhamma here, and here you have dhammatain, or you could have fatha as well. In case of a stop, this letter raw becomes sakin. We know that, if we stop here, raw is going to become sakin. We know that. In such a case, if the preceding letter has a kasra, like here, or kasratain, then the letter raw is pronounced soft, or thin, that is muraqqaq. So, um, if you stop, ra becomes sakin, and the sakin ra preceded by a letter that is that has a kasra. How will we say it? La qadir, ra flat. La qadir here. Al muddathir. Okay, ra will be flat because ra becomes sakin preceded by a letter which has kasra. Muddathir, ra. Okay, then the second last one. If the letter ra bears a temporary kasra, okay, so then the letter ra, okay, once again, if the letter ra bears a temporary kasra, then the letter ra is pronounced soft or thin, that is muraqqaq. In the example, the shown word is a combination of, okay, wadhkur and isma. Okay, so wadhkur and isma, these are the two um, words, but then this kasra actually is placed because actually the word is wadhkur. Ra is sakin in the actual word wadhkur. But when you put the two words together, then the ra gets a kasra. This is the so you can say technical rule in Arabic. When you're putting these two words together, then the kasra is going to come. But normally this word will have a ra sakin. Ra will be sakin. Wadhkur isma. But when you put the two together, it will be wadhkur risma. So in this case, you will pronounce the ra soft or thin. So how will we say this? Wadhkurisma. Ri. Ra will become flat. But if you were to say that word on its own like that, with a raw sakin, it would have been wadhkur. Why? Because raw sakin preceded by a letter with a dhamma. Wadhkur. But now in this combination,
واذكر اسم
the ra does not have sukun anymore. Ra gets a kasra. Okay, and hamzatul wasl goes away because we are joining the two words. So the ra will be joining the sin directly ris, and ra will be done with a kasra. Wadhkurisma ra, ra flat. And the last one here, if the letter ra has a dhamma tanween, that is dhammatain. So the letter ra has a dhammatain, or fatha, or a fatha, and if it is preceded by a layyina ya. What is layyina ya? Okay, layyina ya is ya sakin preceded by a letter with a fatha. That's what layyina is. Okay, let me take this away. So now you see that. So you have, so what does it say now? If the letter bears a dhammatain. So in here, you have dhammatain here, or a fatha. So here, in both these cases, you have actually dhammatain. And if it is preceded by ya layyina. Okay, so it is, this is ya sakin, but it is ya sakin, but it is categorized as ya layyina because ya sakin preceded by a letter with a fatha. Same here. Ya sakin preceded by a letter with a fatha. So whenever ya sakin is preceded by a letter with a fatha, it's known as ya layyina. Ya sakin preceded by a letter with a fatha. So it is ya layyina. Okay, so then what happens? Ya layyina. Then if the reciter does not stop at the letter ra, then it should be recited with tafkheem. But if the stop is made, then the ra should be recited with tarqeeq. So if I was going and I was not going to stop here, then it will be tayrun, run, heavy, ra, rounded, mufakham. But if I decided to stop here, then I am going to change the ra. I'm going to make it flat, muraqqaq, flat. And I will stop here by saying tayr, ra, tayr, not tayr. A lot of people make this mistake. Okay, they will say, they will religiously say tayr and really make it rounded. So this is actually wrong. So this is the rule that governs that. Okay, tayr, if you stop, if you don't stop, tayrun, and as you come, the ra will be rounded because of the dhammatain. Here same thing, khayrun if you are continuing. But if you're going to stop here, if you're going to stop, then ra becomes sakin for sure. And because it is preceded by ya sakin, or ya layyina actually, which is ya sakin preceded by a letter with a fatha, ra sakin will be read flat, muraqqaq. Khayr, خير. Ra. There you go. So although it was actually a review of rules of raw that we did in the tajweed notes, but I think it was much more detailed, much more detailed, I think, today, and I think it did bring them out in a very much more clear manner. Alhamdulillah. I'm not comparing the two, but what I'm saying is that this discussion was, I think, necessary. And I think the rules of raw being so many, as you can see, 14 of them here, I think they do need. It is quite justified to spend this much time on the rules of raw. So sorry. Yeah. So you can always go back to these rules here, and each one of them has a sound file like this one here.
طير خير
Okay, each one of them. So go through each one of them and click them, and then see how the sound is supposed to be. Read this text as well. Read the text, and then test it out over here. Okay, and then we're going to apply. So now, not much time left. So let us go to our Mus'haf and read the next page. We read page 6, so we're going to read page 7 now. I'm going to make this big. Okay, here we go. So read along with me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قلنا اهبطوا منها جميعا فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هداي فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. والذين كفروا وكذبوا بآياتنا أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون. وآمنوا بما أنزلت مصدقا لما معكم ولا تكونوا أول كافر به ولا تشتروا بآياتي ثمنا قليلا وإياي فاتقون. ولا تلبسوا الحق بالباطل وتكتموا الحق وأنتم تعلمون وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين أتأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب أفلا تعقلون واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم وأنهم إليه راجعون يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأني فضلتكم على العالمين واتقوا يوما لا تجزي نفس عن نفس شيئا ولا يقبل منها شفاعة ولا يؤخذ منها عدل ولا هم ينصرون صدق الله العظيم. So let's quickly, just we have 5 more minutes about. So let's quickly go and look at some of the raws, okay, before we finish. So let's find the first raw and see what rule we can apply on it. Did I pass one? Not yet. I don't think so. Okay, here you go. There's one right here. There you go. So now, what's going to happen here? Ra has a dhamma. Okay, so simply we are continuing. Ra is not sakin, so no special things. Ra with the dhamma is going to be mufakham, rounded, heavy, full mouth. Kafaru, raise the back of the tongue. Kafaru, not kafaru, not ru, but ru, raise the back of the tongue. Okay, next one here. We are stopping here because of this punctuation here. Sod lam ya. It's one of the punctuations where you can stop. So how would we do it? Ashabun nar. Okay. So what happened when I stop? When we are stopping, because the ra is going to become sakin. As you know, when you stop, mutaharrik ra becomes sakin. And if there's a ra which is sakin, you look at the letter before, which is significant, which is known with a fatha, na, and this fatha is going to go and make this ra sakin, mufakham, rounded, heavy. Nar. That's what we did. Ashabun nar. Okay, and continuing. All right, here. So what do we have? We have ra with a fatha. So simply ra, heavy, rounded. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا Ra with a dhamma, heavy again. Udhkuru, Ra heavy. Here, Ra sakin. Okay, preceded by a letter with a fatha. Here. So it will be مفخم فارهبون وإياي فارهبون. Okay, all right, let me just move it up slightly. In this one here, أول كافر به. So here actually this is actual kasratain. It's a kasratain, but the way it is written like this is because we will discuss this when we do the rules of Noon Sakin and Tanween, that whenever there is a Tanween and it is followed by a letter Ba. So when you put these, when as you're reciting these words, okay, together one after the other, okay, then the effective sound between these two words will be that of a meme. So that's why you get this. Um, what they do is rather than you put the two kasratain, they will take the first one and they will just put a meme and like this here. And if you even read it just like that, so it will, the sound is going to be correct. For example, kafi, and then if you were to actually read like this, ra meme kasra rim, kafirim bi, okay, and meme and ba, when they merge together, okay, then you get the nasal sound extending. So simply kafirim bi. So ra in this case is going to be kasra, or even if you don't even put the meme and you put the actually kasratain, ra will the kasratain will be flat. Kafirim ri, flat. Here ra had a dhamma, ru heavy. Okay, I think our time is done.